Mike and I and the Great Adventure, written by Samuel David, narrated by Darrell Jordan. Mike and I and the Great Adventure by Samuel David. Chapter 1, A True Story, Children of the 50s and 60s. This book is a true story. Everything described in this book happened. This story takes place between January 1965 and ends in August of 1968. This time period is called the Summer of Love Years, the hippie days, the time of Haight and Ashbury in San Francisco, free love, bell-bottoms, colorful printed shirts, and, of course, long hair. When the Beatles were on the Ed Sullivan Show in February 1964, the next day everyone, it seemed, now combed their hair straight down instead of straight back. The Beatles were in, and Elvis was out. However, not for me. Very nonconformists we were as teenagers and young adults. The Beatles, Mick Jagger, and the Rolling Stones, Mamas and the Papas to name a few, fueled this time period, made it a turning point in American pop culture. This included the new drug culture, runaways, Vietnam deserters, draft evaders, protesting by college students over the war, and, of course, civil rights. This time period was a turning point in the cultural history of America. We were reeling from the Kennedy assassination in 1963, the Cold War, and nuclear annihilation. In grade school in the 50s, we practiced tornado and nuclear attack drills. If a bomb had been dropped, archaeologists would have found kids in a position of heads down and arms folded over their head. Not much protection there for sure, but we participated. We thought of this drill as necessary, for the bomb was a serious threat to our existence. As earlier stated, this is a real-life story with actual participants whom somehow ended up in this period as actual partakers in our country's history, at least as observers. When I tell my children I was at Haight and Ashbury in 1968 as a runaway, they just look at me as if I'm insane. Then I tell them we were in Chicago during the 1968 Democratic Convention and watched the protest and famous Grant Park riots. At this point, they concluded we were crazy, I suppose. But we were there as many other young people of our time. What we were labeled or called during this time was dropouts. This means we dropped out of society and its rules, especially its rules. What I mean by we is I had a co-conspirator with me who shared in this great adventure along with two others later on. However, to protect the innocent, I'm going to call him Mike instead of his real name. Just so you know, I have considered having this written for several years, but Mike would not have been too happy if I did. He just wanted it forever hidden. However, just before he passed away, I told him I was going to get a ghostwriter and write our story. He stated to me I should make sure he was dead before I did. Therefore, I have waited. In addition, his children have always asked me what we did, for they never really knew the whole story. I told them after the dad passed, I would have it written. With this in mind, as we write the story, I still will be using different names for the characters, including my own. Therefore, I will just use Sam for my identity. However, I'm not concerned one way or the other, for those who know me will figure it out anyway. The crux of this story is in a very short period, we spent over $30,000 in 1968. Today, with inflation, this equates out to we spent a bit over $210,000, or alternatively close to $250,000. Just imagine in today's world spending $250,000 in less than 45 days, then get away with it. Well, almost. For those who think this story is fictitious, I refer you to the Kansas City Star, 1968, the New York Times, and the Chicago Sun-Times, along with other newspapers. It was a good story then, an even better one now. How the system allowed us to do this, I will never really know. However, somehow, some way, we did it. I can remember several times when we thought we would be caught, but we were never caught, at least during the adventure. We found out later the FBI and several states were looking for us and were tracking our movements across the border and state lines. Each of our parents had issued missing persons reports on us, and of course, the Navy was looking for Mike. The girls were also probation violators as
Sample complete. Ready to continue?